is now time for question period. I recognize the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Good morning, Speaker. Last week, the government decided to change the law to hide the Premier's cell phone records. Now, the Premier has since then attacked the privacy watchdog, whose job it is to maintain transparency and accountability of this government. He has attacked journalists who, I will point out, have no other option but freedom of information, because this is just the least transparent government we've seen in Ontario's history. The Premier proudly claimed that nobody cares about that, but I got to tell you, the research is showing pretty clearly that the majority of Ontarians do very deeply care about this issue. So, Speaker, it is not too late. The people have spoken. I would ask the Premier, will he commit today to scrapping these outrageous changes and handing his phone records over to the court, as the courts have ordered him to do so?
Recognize the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Speaker. We're introducing legislation this week that is going to modernize Ontario's FOI and cybersecurity rules that have been outdated, 40 years old. There was probably very few people actually even in this House that were born at that time when this legislation was actually written. That legislation was written, well, there's a few of us, yes, but that legislation was written before smartphones, before cloud computing, before artificial intelligence. The effects of this legislation no longer are valid today. What we're doing is codifying existing jurisdictional prudence, which has been seen throughout Canada and other jurisdictions, whether it's cabinet confidentiality or privacy. We're updating a system that is old. It's going to increase the public's access to information through the public sector. 95% of information that you are able to see today, you will still be able to see. The only information that will still be confidential, which should be under the cabinet confidentiality rules that have been set in the rest of the country, is discussions amongst cabinet members themselves.
Supplementary, the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, have you noticed that the Premier always pretends it's all about law and order until it's all about him? You know? Until law and order applies to him. And then suddenly, yeah. Speaker, these are the Premier's own supporters who oppose these changes, right? Voters who elected him because he sold himself like he was some kind of straight shooter, didn't he? Who was going to tell it like it is. And now he's hiding government records on his personal phone and changing the law to protect himself. This is the opposite of what the people of Ontario called for from this government. It is very clear that the government gravy train has been completely derailed as they try to cover up this mess. So I would like the Premier to answer us, what more evidence does the Premier need to understand that people don't like government cover-ups?
Back to the Minister for response.
Thank you, Speaker. And speaking of the gravy train derailed, that's exactly what happened in 2018. When we were elected with a majority government, the first thing we noticed when we came into government was the books that were cooked by the previous Liberal government, hiding a $15 billion deficit. That's what the people of Ontario care about, Speaker. The people of Ontario care about good fiscal management, about affordability, about having a job, and we're very focused on that. And speaking of accessibility and transparency, Speaker, there has never been a government in the history of Ontario that has been more accessible than this government. Whether it's the Premier, who everyone here has the ability to call. I don't know the Leader of the Opposition's phone number. She probably doesn't take calls from anybody. She doesn't talk to the people of Ontario. The Premier of Ontario has his number out there. You can call him with the problem. I certainly get texts and calls from him dealing with constituents at 11 o'clock at night. This is the most accessible government in the history of Ontario.
The Leader of the Opposition.
I would point out to the member opposite that we wouldn't have learned about all what the Liberals were up to without Freedom of Information laws. Are you kidding me? And I got to say, is it really worth it to the member opposite to get up here and defend the Premier's personal text messages? Have we learned nothing from Hillary? My goodness. People don't like it when their governments cover things up. They don't like it when they hide secrets away. It is not what you were elected to do. It is not what you were elected to do. And I want to be very clear. We're not asking, nobody is asking for the Premier's family text messages. I could care less what he is up to in his personal life. We are not asking for his TikTok login. We are not asking for his Wordle scores. We are asking for information about what government business he is conducting on his personal devices, and the courts have ordered him to release that. Will the Premier do the right thing and stop hiding his personal devices from the people?
The Minister for response.
Yeah, I can assure the member opposite that the Premier is not on TikTok. We on this side of the House follow the rules of cybersecurity in this province, in this country. Like, where are you?
Order.
Are you on TikTok? Are you giving your information to foreign sources?
Order.
This government, actually, speaking of that, Speaker, this government is committed to cybersecurity, and that's a major part of this legislation. We have over 1 trillion incidents of cyber attack on this province every single year. That's 30,000 a second. What we are doing is ensuring that cybersecurity that we have at the
Don
provincial
Valley
level.
North will come to order.
Part of this legislation is ensuring the cybersecurity protections we have provincially, which sounds like the members opposite don't adhere to, is broadened out to the broader public sector so that hospitals keep their data safe, so that schools keep their data safe, so that provincial associations keep their data safe. We're focused on cybersecurity on this side of the House, protecting the information of Ontario and keeping it safe for data.
I will remind the members to come to order, or they will be warned and they will be named. Leader of the Opposition, and that goes for...
Speaker, my question is to the Premier. Yesterday, teachers and education workers all across Ontario received a pretty insulting letter from the Minister of Education trying to control graduation ceremonies. By the way, graduation ceremonies are those celebrations of our students, their achievements, and what they have achieved with the help of our teachers and education workers. And I would point out, against all odds, because under this government, they have seen cuts and underfunding for years. And now it sounds like the minister is telling young people to stay silent. So let me ask the Premier this. If a high school student giving a speech at graduation as their, say, class's valedictorian talks about how they can no longer attend college or university because of this government's OSAP cuts, would that be considered too divisive or contentious for a graduation ceremony, or are they allowed to only praise your government?
Minister of Education.
It's interesting that she didn't like the letter, but she quoted from the letter quite extensively, Madam Speaker. Look, I made it very clear in that letter that I don't want teachers put in the middle of disagreements between students and school boards. There was a memo that went out from the Hamilton District School Board to teachers. So a faceless superintendent in that board decided that graduation ceremonies shouldn't focus on student achievement. Student achievement, by the way, which comes about because of the hard work of teachers, right? So a graduation ceremony is about the student's success, but it's also a way for parents to recognize what teachers have done to build on that success. So this superintendent in Hamilton decided, let's make it divisive, let's turn it away from the success of students and put that on the responsibility on the shoulder of the teachers organizing. Well, that superintendent, you know what that superintendent should do? Go to every single one of these graduation ceremonies so that when parents are upset by the divisive nature of it, when parents are upset that the focus is not on students, let them take the heat from the students, not the teacher. We should focus on success of students and what they've accomplished.
Leader of the Opposition.
Okay, Speaker, so I will point out, first of all, to the minister that the hard work of our teachers, yes, but with no thanks to this government, because they have treated our education workers just dismally. So we have a government that is changing the laws to hide everything from the people of Ontario. And now you are trying to muzzle students. The minister cannot force teachers and students to agree with him. Okay? That is not how democracy works. That's right. Our classrooms don't need political interference from this minister. They need education assistance. Okay? They need windows that aren't broken and hallways that aren't flooded. That's what they need. They need smaller class sizes. Let's start there. Why is this Premier policing what students and teachers can say instead of focusing on fixing Ontario's struggling education system?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, there is a very clear indication of the difference between the New Democrats and the Liberals and Progressive Conservatives. When it comes to education, the focus needs to be on students, parents, and teachers, full stop. Now, 85% of an education budget goes for salaries of educators. You know why that is? Because educators are the backbone of the education system. Without educators, none of us would be here. That is what the system focuses on. It should not be about putting teachers against parents, Madam Speaker. And the opposition, they're suggesting that when that 5% of teachers, like in any profession, aren't good, aren't focused on bringing student achievement up, that we should protect them? No. So is the Leader of the Opposition suggesting that when 2 teachers went on a racist rant in Toronto that I should not fire them? Well, I disagree, and that's why I fired them. And when a superintendent, high-ranking board official, went on a rant on TikTok and said that President Trump should be assassinated, you know what happened? That superintendent got fired.
I recognize the member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Well, Speaker, let's talk about what teachers and parents want to hear from this minister on racism. Because this morning, parents of black children is here with a request for the Premier. A year after the Human Rights Commission confirmed that there is systemic racism in our schools and offered a roadmap with 29 recommendations, nothing has happened. This government has been completely silent while black students continue to suffer discrimination in our schools. Parents and teachers want to hear a firm commitment that the government will implement the recommendations along with a clear timeline. Will the Premier make that commitment to them this morning, yes or no?
I recognize the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, I tend to agree that under the current governance structure across the province of Ontario, governance structure where trustees have been in charge of a system, that we have seen failings across the province of Ontario that have led to challenges. And I know the former minister moved in very quickly in the Peel situation to put a supervisor in place.
Member from Ottawa South will
very
come to order.
soon, we will be bringing governance reforms to this House, which I think will in part deal with this. As you know, Bill 33 allows the minister to step in much quicker. It's a bill that they did not support. So in instances where we are seeing challenges in the system that aren't being addressed by school boards, we will step in and we will make it right. That is part of Bill 33, and significant reforms are coming very soon, which will allow us to continue these reforms, which will allow us to address very serious situations like this. I completely agree. Trustees have failed us, boards have failed us, but change is coming.
Question. I recognize the member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Speaker. Tomorrow we'll hear from the half-trillion-dollar man, a.k.a. the Finance Minister, on what vanity projects and gimmicks the deflated Doug Ford Conservative government will put in this year's budget. From what we've heard, we'll see the work of the Premier of Toronto, who wants his own airport, a shiny new convention centre, instead of doing his job as the Premier of Ontario and helping people who are out of work, out of a home, and feeling so out of luck. People know that after 8 years of this Conservative government, life is harder here in Ontario. My question to the Finance Minister: will this budget put an end to the shiny new toys for the Premier and actually make life better for people here in Ontario?
I recognize the member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's interesting hearing the opposition talk about talk about this the way that they're talking about it. When you take a look at the fiscal management that this Premier and this Minister of Finance have done, let's take a look at the history of it. There was a time when Ontario's debt-to-GDP ratio was above 41%. And the Liberal government at the time said that if it got above 40, that would cause problems for us. In their term as government, we saw a decrease in Ontario's credit rating. But what have we seen since 2018? We've seen that debt-to-GDP ratio drop. We are now at 36%. Wow. That is because we've improved the economy. We have done things to make the economy stronger, and we've never raised a single tax while doing that. On top of that, DBRS and Standard & Poor's have given a credit rating increase to Ontario. And I'll have more to say in my supplementary.
Back to the member for Don Valley West.
Speaker, after 8 years of this Conservative government, life is harder here in Ontario, especially for the record number of people out of work under this government. The government's response? Spend hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on delusional self-promoting ads. They are bombarding us with them. During the Super Bowl, the World Series, on billboards, online, and in full-page newspaper ads. Here's how the next one should go. Soon, Ontario taxpayers will pay for a brand new convention centre in Toronto, but Ontario residents will have no new homes, worse hallway health care, and bad learning outcomes for our kids. That's how this government neglects Ontario. Back to the Finance Minister. Will he please tell us when he'll stop wasting hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on ads and actually start making life better for people in Ontario?
Back to the member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. June 4th, 2018 is when it started, to make life better for the people of Ontario. Our economy was at $717 billion for our GDP in 2018. This year it exceeded $1 trillion. You do not have the money that you need to spend on social infrastructure if you do not have a strong economy. That's why we've spent the last 8 years building that economy back up. We've seen the growth in the GDP. We've seen the growth in employment. More than 1 million people today are employed in Ontario than what there was at the end of 2017, at the end of the disastrous rule of the Liberals. This government has been doing things to increase the number of employment opportunities, to support workers, to support people all throughout this province, and we're seeing the results of it, Madam Speaker.
Back to the member for Don Valley West.
Speaker, we know about the reckless spending habits of this deficient Doug Ford Conservative government. No fiscally responsible minister would spend over $100 million taxpayer dollars on self-promoting ads. No fiscally responsible minister would let hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars go to Skills Development Fund applicants who got a failing grade. No fiscally responsible minister would give out $340 million in blank checks to parents and call that education spending, while cutting the number of adults in the classroom and failing our students. But, Speaker, this finance minister has done all of this. Back to the finance minister. When will he wise up, step up, and deliver a budget that makes life better for the people of Ontario?
Minister of Economic Development.
Speaker, those ads, which incidentally run all around the world, have had success. Massili from France, $85 million investment in Ontario. Sandvik from Sweden, $85 million investment in Sudbury. Element 5 from Austria, $107 million investment, 150 jobs in St. Thomas. Ferrero out of Italy, $445 million, 500 jobs. Marvell out of the U.S., $238 million, 350 jobs. Speaker, our trade with the European Union is up 38% since we were elected. India up 88%. South Korea up 94%. They see these ads at every airport and every magazine. Switzerland up 132%. United Kingdom up 194%. Brazil up 241%. Vietnam up 288%. People around the world understand that when you want to build something in the world, you build it here in Ontario.
Recognize the Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Speaker. And my question is for the Minister of Education. And after 8 long years, this minister and this Premier and this Conservative government continue to make life harder for Ontario families. Our schools are not safe places to learn or to work. Class sizes are too big. Special education has been starved, and there is a mental health crisis in our schools that's not being addressed. Speaker, Ontarians don't want much. All they need is for their kids' schools to be safe places to learn and to work, and they're not. So, Speaker, my question to the minister is, why are you making it harder for young families with kids in Ontario schools?
Recognize the Minister of Education.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'll remind the member opposite that under a progressive Conservative government, we are seeing the highest graduation rates in the history of the province. We are seeing reading and writing scores on the increase across the province at their highest level ever. We are seeing increases in math scores. Since that government left office, we're seeing them increase. But you know what? It's not good enough for us. That is why we are doubling down to make sure that we can improve our math scores for our students. Now, under the previous Liberal government, what did they do? They starved teachers, right? They starved teachers for all of their pet projects. Under our government, you know what we're doing? We're putting $750 back, giving it directly to teachers. You know why? So that they can fund their classrooms, so that they don't have to go to parents like they did under the Liberals and say, can you help us? We need to go to Dollarama, or we need to go buy to the dollar store to buy supplies for our classroom. You know what we're doing? We're giving money directly to teachers so that they can outfit their classrooms. That is good news for teachers, it's good news for students, great news for parents, and it's all about putting students.
Back to the Leader of the Third Party.
Well, Speaker, I have a 4-letter word for the minister. EQAO. It's all on you. 8 years. Look at those results. But let me tell you a story about Marigold. Marigold is 6 years old. She lives in my riding. She's a young girl with exceptional needs. She's a bright young girl. She got into grade 1 with an assessment that identified her exceptional needs. 2 years later, nothing. Nada. Not a thing. 2 years, no support, Minister. And Marigold is not the only child in this province that this is happening to. There are thousands and thousands of others. So my question to the minister is, life is hard already for Marigold. Why are you making it harder for her?
Education.
Off his question by talking about the EQAO. I would remind the member that, again, under this government, we have the highest graduation rates in the history of the province of Ontario. Under this government and under the reforms started by my predecessors, we have the highest scores in reading and writing that we have ever had in the province of Ontario. Under this progressive Conservative government, we are seeing math scores finally increasing, because you all remember, right? You remember, under Liberals, you discovered math. Under progressive Conservatives, you learned math. That is the difference. But it's not. It simply isn't good enough. It's simply not good enough for us, Madam Speaker. That is why we are putting more supports and resources into the classroom so that our students can do even better, Madam Speaker. That's why we're directly supporting teachers, Madam Speaker, because we know that a system works better when you actually listen to the people who deliver that service. I said in one earlier questions, teachers are the backbone of the education system, and the people I'm listening to are teachers, not an opposition that failed them.
Back to the Leader of the Third Party.
This government has starved special education, and that's why there are stories like Marigold's. So both Marigold's parents work. They can't take time off work. And they couldn't afford the help that Marigold needed. It would have put a big hole in their family budget. But their aunt, she helped them out. She actually drives Marigold to her appointments every week, because they can't take time off work, Minister. They can't take time off work, and they can't afford it. They're lucky they've got an aunt. There's thousands of kids who don't have an aunt or someone who's going to do that. It shouldn't be this way. So, Speaker, it's really, really hard for Marigold and her parents and thousands of other families like that. Why is this minister making their life even harder.
Minister of Education.
Again, just the opposite, Madam Speaker. Again, I've said this on a number of occasions. You know, I don't think parents care when the minister gets up here and says, oh, we have the highest level of funding in the history of the province. I don't think parents care. I don't think they care that when the Leader of the Opposition talks about funding cuts that they know aren't actually in the system. You know what they care about is when my child goes to school, does the teacher have the resources that they need to deliver the best possible outcome? And that is what we are focused on, making sure that our students, parents, and teachers have the resources that they need to give us the best quality students. That is why in Ottawa, in the member's own community, we stepped in to take over a board. He did not support it, to take over a board where parents were flooding the Ministry of Education because the trustees were not listening to them. They were taking money out of the classroom and putting it into pet projects. What we are doing is we're refocusing the system to put students first. And the way you put students first is by listening to teachers, because they are the ones who deliver for students and parents. And I'll continue to do that regardless of what the opposition says. I'm going to focus on teachers, the backbone of the education.
Question, the member for Sudbury.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, let me tell you about Life Labs. Life Labs was sold to an American company, and now they're going to close the Sudbury laboratory testing facility. So under the Premier's watch, that means that another 40 Northern Ontario workers will lose their jobs. That means under the Premier's watch, even fewer opportunities for Northern Ontario for our lab tech students. And most importantly, because the samples are going to be shipped down to Southern Ontario, they may be delayed or lost, and Northern patients will face great uncertainty. So my question, Speaker, is the Premier loves to say protect Ontario. Why isn't he protecting Northern Ontario from American companies?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, I think first and foremost, the member should check his numbers. In fact, there is not 40 layoffs in Northern Ontario. He would know that if he'd had those conversations. The important piece to remember here is that we have organizations that have signed binding contracts with the Ministry of Health to ensure and provide services. And in fact, we've actually increased the number of collection points in Northern Ontario so people don't have to travel as far to get those critical diagnostic tests done. We will monitor and ensure that they continue to maintain and follow the contract as signed, but the assurances today is that there is no impact to the individuals who live in Northern Ontario and specifically Sudbury. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Nickel Belt.
Well, Speaker, Quest Diagnostic, the American for-profit company that bought LifeLab, is closing their testing facilities in Sudbury and laying off their staff. This is not acceptable. For us in the North, it means that the quality of the samples will be compromised. The test results will be delayed. We become more vulnerable during emergencies. We lose the training facilities for our MLT, and the list goes on. Rather than paying an American company to collect, transport to Toronto, and test Northern samples, why don't the minister pay Northern Hospital to do the exact same work, just better, faster, and cheaper?
Yep. Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. So again, to reinforce, urgent lab testing remains in our local hospitals across Ontario and, of course, in Northern Ontario, and remains unchanged. As I mentioned, we actually have 6 increased opportunities for people to go so that they don't have to travel as far. We have a contract, and we will ensure that the terms of those contracts are followed, but there is no impact that is patient-focused in this situation. And again, I would ask the member, when they raise these issues, to actually look at the facts and make sure that the numbers that they are throwing out in, I understand, a chamber that they can call without impunity, that they actually get the numbers right. Thank you.
Question. I recognize the Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Speaker. My question's for the Minister of Education. So, like many of us here, I was at the education breakfast this morning and heard the Minister of Education speech to teachers. And I was gobsmacked. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I've never heard anything quite like it. But I shouldn't be surprised, because if I'd read the letter, which I did earlier, I would have known why. I would have known why. It was the same tone. It was imperious, condescending, and out of touch with the people, the adults who are responsible for our kids every day. Why would you send a letter like this to every teacher when admittedly you say it's a very small problem?
Prop.
The letter's right here, folks. This letter, the letter, okay? Why would you send it? Why would you send it to every teacher when you say it's a small problem? Because you're trying to make a problem bigger than it actually is. And you're trying to vilify somebody in doing that. So will the minister, Speaker, apologize for the tone, the condescending, imperious tone he took with teachers this morning and with what he put in the letter?
Minister of Education.
I urge the member to do two things. First, table the letter, and after question period, I'll ask for unanimous consent for him to read the letter, and then we'll see what the tone was in that letter. I will simply not apologize for what is in that letter. As I said earlier when I was speaking with teachers, you know what? We have a situation where in Toronto, 2 teachers went on a racist rant on Instagram. The Liberals and the NDP would like to see those teachers in the classroom. I fired them. In the Northern Ontario Board, a high-ranking school board official went on TikTok because that official thought it was important to tell everybody that the President of the United States should be assassinated. You know what? That person is fired because they don't belong in an education system. The backbone of our education system is teachers. 95% of our teachers are hardworking, but we're going to weed out those 5% that have a different agenda than supporting our parents and supporting our students. I won't be swayed by the opposition. We're going to deliver a system that works for parents, a system that works for teachers, and we're going to give our students every opportunity to succeed.
Back to the leader, third party.
When you send a letter to everybody in an organization when you have a small problem, it's because you're trying to make it a bigger problem, and you're trying to deflect from the real problems, which are class sizes that are too big, special education that's being starved, and a mental health crisis in our schools. So if the minister loves the letter so much, I am going to read him a bit of this letter. And what it says is, those in positions of authority must be held to a higher standard, consistent with their responsibilities. Minister, consistent with your responsibilities, will you make class sizes smaller? Will you stop starving special education? And will you address the mental health crisis in our schools?
Yeah.
Minister of Education.
What we have done since we come to office is ensure that students, parents, and teachers are put first in the system. Under the Liberals, it was a war zone in our schools. What we're doing is depoliticizing it so students can focus on one thing, learning. And what teachers have told me is they don't want to be parents, they want to be educators. And we're going to deliver a system that allows them to do that. The member opposite is supporting a graduation ceremony in Hamilton, a superintendent who's decided that we shouldn't focus on students. It shouldn't be focused on student achievement. It should be focused on colonization. Well, you know what? Students work hard. By that point, education for them in that year is done. And what we should focus on students, we should focus on our parents and teachers. And you know what? We should always be proud to be Canadian. We should always be proud of the achievements that we've accomplished. And I will step in every single time someone goes off of that message.
Question. I recognize the member for York Southwest.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Transportation. For years, commuters across Ontario were stuck in gridlock while previous Liberal governments made promises it failed to deliver. But when our government came to office, we came with a real plan to finally build transit that our province needs. That plan includes the Ontario Line, a new rapid transit connection throughout the heart of one of the fastest-growing regions in North America that will create jobs and drive economic growth for communities across this province. Speaker, today we're seeing the plan is becoming a reality, with the construction underway and real progress being made every single day. Speaker, can the minister update this House on how our government is delivering the Ontario line and cutting commute times across the Greater Toronto area?
Recognize the member for Brampton East.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you to the great member from York South Weston for bringing such an important point to this House. Speaker, for the last 15 years, the previous Liberal government promised transit but delivered delays. Our government came forward with a real plan to get shovels in the ground and build the transit Ontario needs. Construction is advancing on the entire Ontario Line corridor at crews are at work at every single station site, and progress is being made every single day. Speaker, the Ontario Line is a 15.6-kilometre project with 15 new stations connecting riders to GO Transit at East Harbour on the Lakeshore East and Stouffville corridors, TTC Line 1 at Osgood as Queen, and TTC Line 2 at Pape, and the Eglinton Crosstown LRT at Don Valley, while supporting 4,700 good-paying jobs, Speaker. While the opposition members voted against, we're building and delivering faster and more reliable transit and getting people moving in our region. Thank you, Speaker.
Back to the member for York South Weston.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'd like to thank the wonderful parliamentary assistant for that important update. Speaker, our government is delivering with the Ontario Line is remarkable by any measure. Workers are tunneling beneath one of the densest urban cores in North America, building stations with world-class complexity and doing it with engineering and expertise that Ontario is named for. But this is also about more than one project. It's about generational commitment to building the transit infrastructure our province needs to grow and compete. Speaker, can the parliamentary assistant tell this House how the Ontario Line fits with our government's broader vision for transit and what it means for the future of Ontario?
Back to the member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Speaker, and the member's absolutely right, Speaker. What our workers and engineers are doing right now is truly remarkable. They're tunneling beneath one of the busiest urban cores in North America, building 15 complex stations and delivering brand new rapid transit line through the heart of our region. The Ontario Line is a key part of our government's historic $70 billion investment in public transit, the largest expansion in Canadian history. Projects like the Ontario Line, the Scarborough Subway Extension, the Yonge North Subway Extension, and the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension will expand capacity, reduce congestion, and connect more people to jobs. The Ontario Line alone is expected to serve 390,000 riders every day while taking off 28,000 cars from our roads. Speaker, while the NDP and the Liberals vote no, our government, under the leadership of Premier Ford and the support of this great PC team, are going to continue building for the people of Ontario, ensuring we have transit ridership and quality transit for generations to come. Thank you, Speaker.
Question. I recognize the member for London West.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Speaker, Julia is a first-year med student. She is president of her class and active with the Ontario Medical Students Association. Medical school tuition is about $25,000 a year. Medical training costs well over $100,000. Julia is worried that the cuts to OSAP grants will make it financially impossible for qualified students from diverse backgrounds to become physicians. Speaker, why is this Premier making it harder for qualified students to access medical training?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm sure that member knows about Ontario Learn and Stay grants. And our new Ontario Learn and Stay grant, that's going to be for family physicians. We're going to cover 100% of tuition, books, and other costs that are associated with that. But you know what? That party loves to cherry-pick facts and only present half of the facts to the general public. The cherry blossoms haven't even bloomed yet, but they're all about cherry-picking the facts. Please give all of the information to the students. There is a significant amount of information you're not sharing with the students. We have a significant amount of grants. The universities have $1.8 billion of grants every year that they give out as well. Speaker, we'll continue to be there with our Ontario Learn and Stay grant, our PSW Learn and Earn program, as well as our new Ontario Learn and Stay grant that will be coming online this fall for family physicians, bringing 400 every cohort.
Member for London West.
Thank you, Speaker. I would encourage the minister to listen to the Ontario Medical Students Association about the kind of support that medical students need. Speaker, the Ontario Nurses Association estimates that Ontario will be short more than 30,000 nurses by the end of the decade. OSAP cuts are going to make things worse. Ontario desperately needs more nurses from diverse backgrounds, and students should not have to take on a lifetime of debt in order to go into nursing. Will this government reverse its damaging cuts to OSAP grants so that Ontario can graduate the nurses we urgently need?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. I guess she didn't hear me because she's speaking about the nursing shortages, and I guess she didn't hear about the Ontario Learn and Stay grant that we've invested into over $170 million, helping 13,000 students come online in nursing and high-priority programs. But if she wants to speak about OSAP, let's speak about OSAP, Speaker. The Auditor General in 2017 said the desperate moves by the Liberal government were unsustainable. And they are unsustainable. The Premier and I have been very clear about that. They are unsustainable, but OSAP is not going away. We have ensured that OSAP has sustainability and stability, not just for these students, but for the next generation of students behind them, Speaker. We'll always be there for our students, but they need to make the investments into themselves and into their future careers, and it will pay tenfold with their future earnings, Speaker.
Question. I recognize the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, before I get into my question, I just need to echo my comments of my colleagues about the appalling remarks of the Minister of Education this morning towards teachers. The tone was much more like the Emperor of Education. They deserve more respect. Speaker, on the eve of the budget, though, the government is trying to fix something that isn't broken. Freedom of information exists so that taxpayers know how their money is being spent. After 8 long years of this Conservative government, life is harder. And taxpayers deserve to know why. Instead, the government is set on hiding the truth. Speaker, this is dead wrong, and everyone knows it. 700,000 people are without a job, and many more are worried. 1 million people rely on food banks, and kids are going to school hungry. Speaker, to the Premier, why is this government more focused on hiding their track record than fixing it?
The Minister of Business and Public Service Delivery.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. We are a government that's committed to fixing the problems that we inherited. In fact, this Minister of Education is the first one that stood up for students, stood up for teachers, and stood up for parents since she brought it up. So let's give him a round of applause, please. And on that note, Speaker, I do want to talk about what we are doing with the legislative changes because it does pertain to children's safety. In fact, I have 4 kids. I have 2 that are in high school. There are many people in this House that have kids in high school or public school, and they don't know what data, how these third-party software providers are accessing children's data. With the legislation that we're proposing today, you are going to have notification to parents. So we are working in the best interests of parents of Ontario, whether it's the Minister of Education or whether it's the Premier or whether it's our caucus colleagues. We're working together to protect the children of Ontario.
Folks, order. Order. I recognize the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, polling shows that Ontarians reject the Premier's Freedom of Information changes. 73% reject doing it retroactively. I know you care about the polls a lot, actually. Transparency and accountability are not optional for a government. They're fundamental. These changes will bury information about how decisions are made at the very top. This is not the government's money. It's the people's, paid for by their hard work and sweat. That money should be going to creating good jobs. It should be going to healthcare. It should be going to education. We know it's not. Speaker, to the Premier, with life getting harder, why is this government more focused on keeping its record secret than fixing it?
I recognize the Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you very much. Well, let's talk a little bit about our record. In your very own riding, Kinetrix invested $22 million and hired 15 people. Oak Hill Distribution invested almost $6 million and hired 20 people. All across, we can find Andriani in London, $55 million, hired 42 people. Young Bunzlauer, $200 million investment, hired 50 people. In MPP Gates riding, Siltec, $100 million investment, 51 people. Heddle Shipyards, $107 million, 30 people. These companies continue to expand in Ontario because they know exactly what they're going to get. Dependability, reliability, predictability. That's why all around the world, that's why we've seen such huge increases in economic development and in companies coming here to Ontario. They know what they're going to get and they trust it.
Question? I recognize the member for Bruce Grey. I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Associate Minister of Energy Intensive Industries. Speaker, we all know that the protectionist measures of Donald Trump have created uncertainty and disruptions to the global economy, which is directly affecting the cost of living for the people and industries in my riding of Simcoe Grey and across our great province. At the same time, our population is growing rapidly, and with that, we are seeing a significant increase in energy demand. Speaker, the industries and workers of Ontario need assurance that we have their backs and that we will protect their jobs and livelihoods today and for generations to come.
Good question.
Through you, Speaker, can the Associate Minister tell this House how our government is ensuring that our energy-intensive industries remain supported?
Associate Minister of Energy-Intensive Industries.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And I want to thank the excellent member for Simcoe Grey for his advocacy and his work on behalf of industry and his riding. I know when we had the opportunity to go through Pilkington Glass in your community, we heard about how crucial having reliable, affordable, and secure energy rates are for the future of industry. And especially for energy-intensive industries, trade-exposed industries, our government is laser-focused on costs, keeping costs down, and ensuring that they have access to all the supports possible to keep them competitive. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through the Accelerate program. We spoke about this, up to $15 million in grants, up to 75% of capital needs that will support industrial energy efficiency programs. Now, why is this important? It helps save the grid money because we don't have to build up excess capacity. It helps save the business money on their monthly bills. And ultimately, it also ensures that they're able to upgrade equipment, keep those jobs, protect workers, and protect Ontario families.
To the member for Simcoe Grey.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Associate Minister for his response and for taking time in his busy schedule to come to my riding and work with one of my constituents. Speaker, the people of Ontario remember the damage that Liberal policies caused to our energy sector, causing a massive surge in electricity prices. Now, with the added threats and uncertainty from Donald Trump and growing geopolitical uncertainty, we have even more reason to support local and to build Ontario's energy self-reliance. Our government has been at the forefront of prioritizing affordability through a made-in-Ontario energy supply chain while keeping our industries and businesses competitive. Speaker, can the Associate Minister share the details about how our government has been protecting Ontario's industries so that they can continue to power our homes, our businesses, and our economy?
Hear, hear. Wow.
Back to the Associate Minister.
Thank you. And I have to tell the member, he knows as well as I do that industry say it's been like night and day. I mean, to have a government that now is supporting them when it comes to energy affordability, when it comes to supporting investments in their communities so that they can grow their businesses. We saw a 300% increase in electricity rates when the Liberals were in power. Since we came to office, we renegotiated thousands of contracts to realize an average 30% reduction in the cost of those contracts, and we've been able to save billions of dollars for businesses. But, Speaker, we know the work is not done. In an era of geopolitical risk, Ontario is an ocean of calm and stability, and we're going to continue to support and ensure that we use competitive procurement and every tool in our toolbox to drive costs down, to keep businesses growing, and ultimately to keep the workers who they employ in their communities and actively growing as well. I want to thank the member for his work, and I encourage all members to work closely with them to ensure that they're able to access every program and support available.
Question. I recognize the member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you. My question is to the Premier. Communities across Niagara were thrown into chaos when the Premier appointed Regional Chair Bob Gale began pushing for forced amalgamation. First, it was outright amalgamation. Now it looks like it's amalgamation light, where 3 big cities get more control and smaller Niagara communities get pushed aside. I get hundreds of emails saying the same thing. Decisions about Niagara should be made in Niagara. Will the Premier commit to consulting Niagara residents, honour their wishes, and rule out forced amalgamation? Yes or no?
Recognize the member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Speaker. And our government has been clear from day one. The process is driven by Niagara, decided by Niagara, from the people of Niagara, for the people of Niagara. If the members opposite don't think Niagara has too many politicians, I question his math, colleagues. Right now, one regional councillor in Peel, who is doing great work, is representing 4 times the amount of people a Niagara regional councillor represents. And what does Niagara get? Well, the mayors can tell you dysfunction, higher taxes, and half the Niagaras support reforming the system, Speaker. And this is about better service for Niagara. And we're going to continue to work with the local mayors to bring about those reforms. Thank you, Speaker.
Back to the member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I didn't hear a clear yes on that one. Data from forced amalgamation in this province shows higher costs, worse service, and less local accountability. The confusion this Premier and his hand-picked chair have caused, along with the lack of proper consultation, made it harder for businesses in Niagara to plan for their future. Will the Premier promise the residents of Niagara that any changes to Niagara governance will only happen with full public consultation and the support of the local municipalities, all of them? Thank you.
Back to the member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I find it a bit rich from the members opposite when they talk about investments to this great province, when they vote against every initiative to make Ontario the most competitive place in the G7 to do business, Speaker. They're going to have an opportunity soon to vote on a budget that will continue to do that, and I hope they will vote with us to protect Ontario and ensure we're attracting more businesses to Niagara and all of Ontario, Speaker. But, Speaker, going to the question at hand, I don't know if the member opposite was aware, but the Standing Committee on Cultural Heritage Infrastructure went to the region of Niagara twice. A few years ago, Speaker, I was part of that committee, did important work on regional governance. We heard directly from mayors, we heard directly from business owners, and we heard directly from those in the community. And that is informing the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and our government as we move forward with regional government reforms, working with our local municipalities. Thank you, Speaker.
Question, the member for Beaches East York.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The government's announcement to amalgamate Ontario's 36 conservation authorities caused mass confusion with all parties involved, including their own. The Minister of Rural Affairs was worried that watersheds feeding into Lake Huron bear little resemblance to those in the Northwest, Lake Superior, and a single regional governance model risks diluting the focus and expertise required to address local shoreline, floodplain, and agricultural impacts. An authority dedicated specifically to Lake Huron was necessary. And lo and behold, shortly thereafter, the government added 2 more conservation authorities to the matrix, and the Minister of Rural Affairs' wish came true. My question to the Premier, can we also write you letters to save our conservation authorities?
Yeah. I recognize the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
And I thank the member for Beaches Woodbine for the question, because the former leader of that party, supports our Conservation Authority reform. He is among thousands from whom we've received consensus for the amalgamation and the strengthening of conservation authorities into 9 watershed-based regional conservation authorities to better equip them equally with updated mapping and the best technology to fulfill the core mandate of flood prevention, of protecting people and property from natural hazards, and strong watershed management. They will be supported and advised. If this House approves our legislation, they will be supported and advised by local watershed councils so that local voice is maintained, municipal governance continues, the funding model continues. This will be better than ever. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Back to the member for Beaches East York.
Thank you, Speaker. Last time I checked, I haven't been to the racetrack lately, so we'll need to get a map as I represent Beaches East York. This government claims that tens of thousands of comments informed their final plan to slash Ontario's conservation authorities from 36 down to 9. Yet submissions received express warnings of loss of expertise, local expertise, fear that smaller municipalities and rural voices will be lost, doubt that amalgamation will not affect staffing, concerns that changes will result in deteriorating standards, and confusion about whether centralization is the best way to achieve efficiencies. So my question to the Premier, besides feedback from your colleagues, exactly what comments did you use to inform your final plan?
Exactly. Yeah. Back to the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to the member for Beaches East York. And we've met in her riding several times to discuss this, among other issues, so I appreciate the question. 14,000 submissions were received, 6 regional workshops we were involved in, hearing from municipal leaders and conservation authority participants. And we listened and we've acted. More than ever before, conservation authorities will be able to fulfill their core mandate. That is backed up by new additional funding with a central conservation agency. The new Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency has been established. It is funded with $20 million of new funding, and we recently announced $3 million of new annual funding beginning this year to support the transition to our new regional watershed-based conservation authorities, to equip them in the transition period, and when the consolidation is complete and they're up and running, new $3 million a year funding. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Question, the member for Oakville, North Burlington.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the amazing, incredible Minister of Seniors and Accessibility. We know that accessibility is essential to daily life, whether it's getting to school, going on public transit, or visiting local facilities. Residents in my wonderful community of Oakville, North Burlington, and across Ontario want to see real progress being made so everyone can fully participate in their communities. Since 2018, our government has heard from families, advocacy groups, and municipalities, and Speaker, we are taking action. Speaker, could the minister share how our government is helping make Ontario more accessible and what progress has been made in communities across our province?
I recognize the Minister of Seniors and Accessibility.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Project by project and community by community, Ontario is becoming more accessible every day. We are working with all levels of government to meet, achieve, and exceed the goals of AODA. All 444 municipalities have accessibility plans that outline how they will implement the AODA. This includes the 2,200 buses, accessible buses we've delivered to municipality. All GO trains and the new subway are accessible. And this year alone, $275 million is being invested making school accessible. And this is how we are driving accessibility, and project by project, community by community, we are getting it done. Thank you.
Back to the member for Oakville, North Burlington.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for that incredible response. Speaker, we know that when barriers are removed, accessibility improves. Daily life becomes easier and more inclusive for people of all abilities. They notice the impact no matter where they are in the province. All over Ontario, neighbourhoods, organizations, and community partners are working to make sure people of all abilities are supported. Speaker, could the Minister share what supports are available to help communities enhance accessibility and create more inclusive spaces across Ontario?
Back to the Minister for response.
I'm so glad the member asked that important question. This morning, I was so happy to announce that the next round of application for the Enhanced Access to Spaces for Everyone, EASE grant, is opening today. This is now the second year of the grant. Earlier this year, we invested in 48 projects all across Ontario. This grant invests $2.25 million for local communities to become more accessible. These opportunities didn't exist under any previous government, but it does now. Under the leadership of this Premier, Ontario is more open than ever before for people of all abilities. Thank you.
Beautiful.